So now the metaphor expands a little bit. So it changes to see Jesus as the door now. So at first he was the shepherd walking into the entrance and calling the sheep out, but now he's the door itself. And there's some cultural background behind this where oftentimes shepherds would actually lay down at the entrance to the pen, and they were the door. So no one could actually go in and out without crossing the shepherd. And so that could be in the background here. But regardless, what Jesus is talking about is salvation. It says in verse 9, I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved. So Jesus is talking about salvation here, and the only entrance to salvation is Jesus himself. Here Jesus is saying, I'm the only way to God, because he is God himself, come down. And so if his claims are true about himself, that he is united with the Father has sent him, all of those things, he has to be the door. It wouldn't make sense for anyone else to be the door because he's the only one who's come down from heaven. And that's what's been established throughout the Gospel of John. So it's really is just a logical extension of who he is as a person.
Right.
The God-man.
Right. Don't fault him for telling the truth.
Exactly. It's like, yeah, it makes sense. So he says, I'm the door. He's the only entrance to salvation. And what's interesting also is that salvation is like a door in the sense that 1 second you're on one side and the other second you're on the other side. Salvation is not a process. Salvation is not a discovery, if you will.
Or just trying really hard long enough.
It's a moment where we go from unsaved to saved.
A status change.
It's a status change.
Right.
It's
like
positional change.
It's like not married and married.
Exactly. Yep. And that's exactly what he's saying with salvation, is that it is a moment of change, of status, that now you are united with Christ. You're forgiven, you're justified. It's a moment.
All right, everybody. Thank you for being here with us today on the Joffer Brothers Bible Podcast, formerly Bible. We are excited to jump into John chapter 10. We're going to be going verse 1 through 21. And this is an interesting passage. We are going to talk about thieves and robbers and sheep and gates and doors and all kinds of stuff.
And even shepherds.
So, Stephen, is there anything you want to say before we start reading?
I don't think so. Let's go ahead and read the first 5 verses.
Okay, go for it.
So it says, Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in another way, that man is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the gatekeeper opens, the sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers.
Okay, so we've got a lot of characters here. We've got gatekeeper, we've got thieves and robbers, we've got shepherds, and we've got, who was that last one? Strangers. So how does this opening connect to the previous story about the blind man?
Yeah, so in chapter 9, we just covered the story of the blind man being healed by Jesus after rubbing mud on his eyes. And the whole chapter really centered around this conversation between the Pharisees and the blind man. And the Pharisees, they were the leaders of the Jewish people. They were the scholars, they were the experts. And this blind man, who was a part of the people of God, who has been struggling his entire life, just received healing. And yet, what do the Pharisees do to him at the end of the story?
They cast him out. And so these leaders are not treating their people very well. And now Jesus tells a story about shepherds who do not take care of the sheep very well, or thieves and robbers and hirelings who do not take care of the sheep very well, all in contrast to the good shepherd. And so what is happening here is Jesus is deliberately contrasting his leadership, his guidance, and love for the sheep with the Pharisees and any other religious leader outside of Christ is being contrasted here. And so Those are kind of the characters at play. Cool. Okay. So
the Pharisees are not taking care of the flock. That's what you're getting at. Is there something from Ezekiel that you wanted to bring up about this?
Yes, yeah. So in Ezekiel, actually, Jesus is going to be fulfilling the prophet Ezekiel here. And if you go back to it, I'll go ahead and read a few of the verses in Ezekiel 34 because it'll help frame the discussion for the rest of John chapter 10. And in John chapter 10, or in Ezekiel 34, it says in verse 2, God is talking and says, shepherds of Israel who have been feeding yourselves, should not shepherds feed the sheep? So he is indicting the leaders of Israel who are these shepherds, and they're feeding themselves. They're not feeding the sheep. They're not caring for the flock. Instead, they are really just caring about themselves. And God, in response to this, in verse 11 says, "For thus says the Lord God, behold, I myself will search for my sheep, and I will seek them out. As a shepherd seeks out his flock when he is among his sheep that have been scattered, so I will seek out my sheep, and I will rescue them from all the places where they have been scattered on that day of clouds and thick darkness, and I will bring them out from the peoples and gather them from the countries, and I will bring them into their own land." And so God says, I am going to come down. I will shepherd my people. I will seek them out. I will rescue them from their desolation. Even though they've been ruled poorly by these terrible shepherds, I'm going to rescue them. And it says in verse 15, "I myself will be the shepherd of my sheep, and I myself will make them lie down, declares the Lord God. I will seek the lost, and I will bring back the strayed, and I will bind up the injured, and I will strengthen the weak." So here, Jesus, in saying what we will see, I am the good shepherd, he's identifying himself with Yahweh's promise to come and bind up the brokenhearted, to heal the sick, to return the captives, to bring freedom, liberty, and joy. He's fulfilling this prophecy in Ezekiel 34. And this prophecy ends by saying, "And I will set up over them one shepherd, my servant David, and he shall feed them. He shall feed them and be their shepherd, and I, the Lord, will be their God, and my servant David shall be prince among them. I, the Lord, have spoken, and I will make them a covenant of peace and banish wild beasts from the land."
Whoa, that's cool.
So what Jesus is doing is he's fulfilling this prophecy that he is the true son of David, united with God himself, as God, the divine shepherd who will guide the people, guide the sheep, and banish every single wild beast.
That is an awesome backdrop to this. Okay, so, and it gets even better as we keep reading this passage. So I'm seeing so many tie-ins already. I'm excited to keep going.
Yeah.
Tell me about the cultural background on the sheepfold and the gatekeeper and all of those things. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, so these first 5 verses, Jesus is basically providing an introduction to what he's going to extrapolate and expand in the subsequent verses.
Right, because this is a figure of speech that we're about to learn that they don't understand.
Exactly.
So then he's going to explain it.
He's going to explain it more. So initially, the picture that is painted here in the first 5 verses would be a group pen of sheep that many different flocks would have been guided into, that then there would be a hired hand that only lets shepherds in and out, and they go and can bring their sheep in and out, and they will find pasture and all of that. And this hired hand guards it, and the true shepherds will be able to go in and out from the gate. Anyone else who tries to climb over the side of the wall, they're clearly not supposed to be there.
Right.
So
they're stealing a sheep.
They're stealing the sheep. They have their own interests in mind.
Right.
And so the picture that's being painted here is that Jesus, he is the true shepherd. He walks into the pen and he calls his sheep by name. And so these sheep are not neutral. Instead, they were guided into that pen by the shepherd Jesus, and they're being led out of the pen by the shepherd Jesus. This shepherd has purchased, tended, lived with, abided with these sheep for a long time. So they recognize his voice. So they already know, they already have a pre-existing relationship with this shepherd before entering into this pen and exiting out of this pen. And so I used to think of it this way, that there was all these sheep who were unpurchased. They were neutral parties inside this pen.
Like it was a marketplace.
It was a marketplace, exactly. That's what I had pictured it as. And then the shepherd comes and says, hey, anyone who wants to follow me, follow me. And then whichever sheep is good enough to be able to distinguish Jesus from the other shepherds then says, oh yeah, no, I'm going to follow that good shepherd, and now I'm going to follow him. And now the shepherd's like, oh, you're a part of my flock. Right, all right, follow me, let's go.
You like my voice, you're in.
Exactly, you like my voice, you're in.
Okay.
That is not the picture here. The picture is there's already a pre-existing relationship between the shepherd and the sheep. The shepherd has already purchased the sheep, led the sheep into this pen, and then the shepherd shows up and speaks, and they recognize his voice, so they follow. Because they already have that pre-existing relationship. It isn't the sheep selecting the shepherd.
Yeah.
The shepherd already knows his sheep.
Yeah, they already know his voice.
And they already know his voice, and he calls them by name. Says, hey, Stephen, you're mine. Come with me.
Jimmy, Derek, Abigail, get over here.
Exactly. Calls them by name. Exactly. And I had never seen this in action until a number of years ago. I was a middle school pastor. And the theme for summer camp that we chose was, I am the good shepherd. And the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. In order to emphasize this, we made everything about sheep and everything about shepherds for the entire week of camp. And we decided to purchase some sheep to bring to camp.
Oh, yeah.
And so we purchased these lambs, brought them to camp, and it was like a petting zoo for all these kids, which was super fun. But when I went to go pick up these little lambs from the farm where they were being raised, I showed up, knocked on the farm door, and the person we were purchasing it from, she walks out and goes, hey, how's it going? And as soon as she said, hey, how's it going? From behind the house, the 3 lambs started screaming, bleating, yelling, and running around the building trying to find their shepherdess. Instantly, as soon as she walked out of the door, hey, how's it going? They were on the move. They were like, we found her. And so...
Sounds like my kids.
Yeah. The sheep recognized the shepherd's voice because they already have this pre-existing relationship with him. Like, they've known the shepherd for a long time. Like, it's all of this is already at play. So it's not, them trying to... like which voice is which.
Yeah, there's all these competing voices, and I just
voices.
need to try to pick the good one, whatever that's already, yeah.
It's like, no, I know the sheep by name, and they're coming.
Okay, got it. All right, so in verse 6, it says, this figure of speech Jesus used with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. Then continuing on in 7, so Jesus again said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. Lay it on me. What's going on here?
So now the metaphor expands a little bit. So it changes to see Jesus as the door now. So at first he was the shepherd walking into the entrance and calling his sheep out, but now he's the door itself. And there's some cultural background behind this where oftentimes shepherds would actually lay down at the entrance to the pen, and they were the door. So no one could actually go in and out without crossing the shepherd. And so that could be in the background here. But regardless, what Jesus is talking about is salvation. It says in verse 9, I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved. So Jesus is talking about salvation here, and the only entrance to salvation is Jesus himself.
So this whole story so far is about salvation, not about just sheep and, just cultural stuff from their time.
Exactly. It's about salvation. It's about salvation, and Jesus is the only entrance to salvation. When he says, I'm the door, he's saying, I'm it. If you want to have salvation, you have to go through me.
Right.
And this can be very offensive for especially modern, pluralistic, relativistic contexts who say basically any religion is valid, and what matters is sincerity. If you sincerely believe something, then that ultimately means you're going to be fine. But that presupposition is wrong on so many different levels, but one of the main reasons why is because it does not take all the claims of the different religions seriously. The claim of the Christian religion is that Jesus is the only way to God.
Right.
And so you are falsifying that claim by saying everything is ultimately right. You're saying, no, you're wrong, Christian. In fact, everything is ultimately fine. And so it's an exclusive claim too.
Right.
Just as exclusive as Jesus' claim is that he's the only way, so the claim that says all ways ultimately make it, that's also exclusive. And it discounts all other.
Right. You think you're not disagreeing with anybody by saying everything's good. But you are disagreeing with Christianity if you say that, because Christianity says that's not true.
Exactly. Okay. And you're disagreeing with Christianity and pretty much every other religion. So it's true. like you are your own minority by saying that.
Yeah.
So you're not any more inclusivistic like you think that you are.
So you are in your own little religion.
Exactly.
Got it.
And so Jesus here saying he's the only way to God, and that makes sense because he is the God himself.
A pitiful religion at that, by the way.
Yeah. Also true. Also true. And here Jesus is saying, I'm the only way to God because he is God himself. Come down. And so if his claims are true about himself, that he is united with the Father has sent him, all of those things, he has to be the door. It wouldn't make sense for anyone else to be the door because he's the only one who's come down from heaven. And that's what's been established throughout the Gospel of John. So it's really is just a logical extension of who he is as a person.
Right.
The God-man.
Right. Don't fault him for telling the truth.
Exactly. Exactly. It's like, it makes sense. So he says, I'm the door. He's the only entrance to salvation. And what's interesting also is that salvation is like a door in the sense that 1 second you're on one side and the other second you're on the other side. Salvation is not a process. Salvation is not a discovery, if you will.
Or just trying really hard long enough.
Exactly, or trying really hard long enough. Instead, it's a moment where we go from unsaved to saved.
A status change.
It's a status change.
Right.
It's like positional change.
It's like not married and married.
Exactly. Yep. And that's exactly what he's saying with salvation, is that it is a moment of change, of status, that now you are united with Christ. You're forgiven. You're justified. It's a moment, and it's that status change. Mm-hmm. So that's also communicated, I think, in the door metaphor.
Right. Okay, got it. Pick it up in verse 10.
It says, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. So this is a classic verse, one of the greats in the Gospel of John. So I wanted to just read it and talk about it a little bit. And when you hear that the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy, we were talking the other day, just you and I, about how we have a legitimate enemy that's trying to undermine everything. You want to share some of that?
Just realizing that there are spiritual powers of darkness out there, that namely Satan, who wants to destroy your family, wants to destroy you, wants to keep you from God, and is our adversary. And that's actually real. I think
we forget that.
Yeah, you just kind of, especially living in America. Yeah. You were just in Africa, and that was much more on display.
Yeah.
Right? But in America, we just don't see it that much. We live in a great civilization where, things are generally pretty good. And you're like, you know what? Okay. maybe it's not such a big deal. Mm-hmm. And I think there's also a tendency to think that Satan's just the guy who wants you to have a bummer day, or whatever. Yeah. But actively trying to destroy your life is what Satan's trying to do. And that's what this verse is talking about, right? Because it is talking about Satan.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The thief comes only to steal and to kill and to destroy. And that reality of a active, malevolent, supernatural being that is trying to undermine everything good and beautiful and true in the world is so neglected in our understanding of reality. We just don't think that there's something genuinely trying to destroy us. And yet that's what it's saying.
Yeah.
That's what Jesus is saying, that there is a thief that has come only. This is the only thing. This is his mission. This is what he's on. Yeah, this is what he is.
What he's up to.
What he's up to. Only to steal and kill and destroy.
Yeah, destruction is the name of the game. That's it.
Yeah. And oftentimes even just naming that and knowledge of that is the first step. And throughout the rest of the New Testament, they constantly reiterate that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, that the weapons of our warfare are not carnal but spiritual for the tearing down of strongholds, that there's this spiritual warfare going on. And even just pausing for a second, I know in my own heart and mind, I can be unaware that the difficult thoughts that are going in my mind can often be the product or result of a spiritual attack. And when I pause for a second and go to a 360-degree view or a 10,000-foot view and look down on myself and see, oh, you're being attacked right now, all of a sudden the battle becomes so much more doable in a sense, because you realize you're in a battle.
Right.
It's like when you don't realize you're in a battle, you're going to get smoked.
Right.
But when you realize you're in a battle, then you can actually realize, okay, I need to get ready for this.
Yeah, don't accept all your thoughts and things as true.
Yeah.
Like many of them are things that the enemy are lies that he tells you.
Yeah.
And so if you just like are letting your mind feed you things that, and you're just like, well, everything I think must be true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't know that you're in a battle.
Yeah.
You are actively in a battle against a thief, a robber, a destroyer who wants to bring you down. And you know what? That should awaken you, but it shouldn't scare you.
Yeah.
Because Jesus has all authority in heaven and on earth. Mm-hmm. You should not be afraid of the devil. But knowing that the devil is there and wants to bring you down should be a call to arms, a call to action. So there's a difference between being just a scared civilian or somebody who hears the alarm and goes to battle.
Active duty.
That person is like, I'm fulfilling my duty and is actively trying to take ground and all of that. And like, there's no reason that we should ever lose. Right? Because if we have Christ in us, like if you're actively participating in this battle, you have full confidence. And the devil's not going to come in at night and stab you. Yeah. like if you are somebody who's prone to fearing Satan, this is a reminder that he doesn't have power.
Yeah.
Like he has lies. He can throw things at you and all of that. But what is he, a toothless lion? What's the, like...
Walks around as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But he's not, like, able to... He can't eat you.
Yeah.
Like, so no fear.
Yeah.
Trust in Jesus, right? Because Jesus has all the power.
Yeah.
But if you don't... Like, the power that Satan has is you thinking that he's not there, or that you...
Or that he's
or
so
believing
powerful.
his lies,
Yeah.
or that he's so powerful. You know, those are the ways he has power. Those aren't real ways.
Yeah.
Right? Jesus has real power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In contrast to the thief that has come to steal, kill, and destroy, there's Christ who says, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. And what do you think that means when he says that I've come to have life and have it abundantly?
Yeah, that's life lived with God, right?
Yeah.
Like a closeness and connection to him.
Yeah. The most abundant thing that we can have is an overflowing God that we are close to. The Trinitarian, triune, loving, effervescent God, we get to be close to that. And that is the ultimate abundance that we can have. An eternal, infinite, loving God.
Right.
And that is what life abundantly truly means. It doesn't mean that we get everything we ever want and that there's health and wealth and whatever else.
Right.
It's that we have access to an abundant God who is gracious and kind and loving, and we get to have a close relationship to him because of the sacrifice of the Good Shepherd.
Right. And so it's similar to the living water that we've already talked about in John, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And he then goes on to say how that abundant life is purchased and where that abundant life comes from. He says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. So here's one of the great I am statements. We've now hit 2 in just this chapter. I am the door, and now I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep.
Is this the ego in me? Yeah.
Fill in. Mm-hmm.
It's I am. It's also connected to the name of God.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I've heard one commentator say that he's sketching out the I am statements, completing the sentence. Where it's like, I am what? It's like, oh, I am the good shepherd. I am the door. I am whatever. And so filling in that statement. So I am the good shepherd. And notice how he identifies what makes him the good shepherd.
The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep.
Exactly. So it's tied to the cross where Jesus dies for the sheep. And before we get into what that means, because it kind of teases it out, let's go ahead and read a few more verses where it says, he was a hired hand and not a shepherd who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And I have other sheep that are not of this fold, and I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. So here we see obviously so much of Ezekiel 34 totally bursting through, where we have beasts, a wolf that is scattering the sheep, but the good shepherd defeating the wolf and laying down his life for the sheep, and there's one shepherd and there's one flock and there's all this unity and all those things bursting forth from Ezekiel 34 like we already read.
He's willing to be devoured by the wolf to save the sheep. Yeah.
Exactly. But the hired hands do not. No. And so this is reiterating back to the Pharisees, who are these hired hands who are feeding themselves rather than the flock. But also it relates to every single other religious institution that is selfishly motivated and ultimately corrupted. And this can happen in the church. This can happen in other religions. This can happen in all kinds of things that are destroying sheep and fleecing the flock, if you will.
Yeah.
Classic line.
Nice.
Fleecing the flock.
Yeah.
And so I just want to encourage people. Been talking with some people who've church hurt type stuff. They're not the good shepherd.
Right.
I would beg you to not attribute the wrong behaviors and the sinful, selfish behaviors of Christian leaders or other religious leaders to the good shepherd. Because the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep.
There's only one good shepherd.
There's only one good shepherd. Even the best hired hands in this world, the best pastors
are sinners.
Exactly. They're sinners. They're going to mess up all of those things.
Yeah.
And so do not tie the character of the shepherd to the character of the hired hands.
Right.
See the character of the shepherd for who he is in and of himself.
Right. And also the New Testament has a lot of guidelines around pastoral accountability. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you are under a shepherd who's not using the biblical means of accountability for pastorship, remember, this guy is just a hired hand, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of reasons why we have church accountability in the New Testament. Yeah. And don't rely on how much you love your guy. And he's like, and just be like, he's a good shepherd. I love this guy, whatever. Like, it's good to have the biblical accountability from this book because it's just a reality.
Yeah, it's just a reality.
Those men are just sinners.
Yeah, they're just sinners. One of the key themes of the pastoral epistles is to not trust a pastor.
That's funny.
Like, we got to have enough elders in place. We got to have accountability, and we got to make sure that they got good character. There's all of these checks and balances because they know that they're just hired. Like, they're not the good shepherd.
You're just a hired hand. Yeah. Okay. So how about a word to the pastors? Jesus tells Peter, right? Feed my sheep, feed my lambs.
Mm-hmm. Later in the Gospel of John.
And so if you are a spiritual leader, remember the task that you've been given, that you are leading sheep and you are a hired hand and you owe your allegiance to be feeding those sheep. And I think that statement about Peter feeding the sheep is definitely contrasted with the Pharisees not taking care of their sheep. And so Jesus is instituting the church and a new people of God, and he's telling his leaders, take care of the sheep.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're a leader, you got responsibility.
Yeah. And so here, then, Jesus is setting himself forward as the true good shepherd, and he focuses in on laying down his life for the sheep, that he's willing to die. And this gives us to the heart of Jesus' mission and one of the really central things that Jesus has done, which is the atonement, that he died on the cross for sins. He died on the cross for sheep. And now the question here is before us is, who did he die for? And when we think about the atonement, did he die for all of the sins for all of the world? Because if he died for all of the sins for every single individual in the world that's ever existed, then that means that every single individual would be saved, right?
Right.
Because there's no more sin to pay for. Mm-hmm. He died for all the sins for all of the world.
Right.
Or did he die for all of the sins for all of his people, for his flock?
Right. Yes.
Yes. Or did he die for some of the sins of all of the world? And the only sin he didn't die for is the sin of unbelief. And you got to get over your unbelief, atone for that sin.
Right.
Through your own works.
That's your one sin you got to overcome.
It's the one sin you got to overcome is your own unbelief, and then you're part of the flock.
No, it's all the sins of his people.
Exactly. And that's what's clearly manifested through this whole thing, where he knows his sheep. He calls them by name. He dies for his flock. And notice that he says that there are more of this flock out there. There's Jew and Gentiles. That he's going to go out and there's more sheep that are not of this fold, and I will bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. And so there will be one flock and one shepherd. Yeah. It's Jew and Gentile.
And he says, I have other sheep from not this fold.
Yeah.
And I'm going to bring them in too. It's not I'm looking for other sheep, or like I might bring some, or we'll see how many I get. So, no, I have them.
Yeah.
They're just not here.
Yeah. Okay. I know them. I know their names, and I'm dying for them. And so there's a specificity around this, where if he dies for his flock, that's what a shepherd does.
Right.
When a shepherd's dying to save his flock, there isn't another flock few mountains down the range that he's also dying for.
Right.
It's like that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
He's dying for his flock.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a very controversial understanding, but I think it makes the most sense of what's going on in this passage.
Right, and it fits with a lot of what John's already talked about, about how all the Father gives the Son, he won't lose any of them, and all of those,
And those whom the Father gives, those are the ones he dies for.
Yeah.
Doesn't die for every single person over the entire world. He dies for those individual people.
Mm-hmm. Right. So it's a specific flock.
Yeah, it's a specific flock. And that is a key part of Jesus' mission. Obviously, that's what makes him the good shepherd, is that he lays down his life for his sheep. And then it says in verse 17, for this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down, and I have authority to take it up again. This charge I have received from my Father. So the Father sends the Son to save the flock that the Father has chosen beforehand. And this is all part of the intertrinitarian unity in salvation. And the Son says, I am sent by the Father, but I have the authority to put my life down. I have the authority to take it up again. This is a specific, intentional work of the Son that is not forced upon him, but gladly taken up and gladly accomplished by the Son.
Right.
Because one of the arguments against penal substitutionary atonement, where Christ takes the punishment for our sin, is that that's divine child abuse, that the Father is punishing the Son. That's ridiculous. How could that possibly be? The innocent Son is taking the wrath of the Father. That's divine child abuse. But no, here it's saying that I lay down my life of my own accord. This is a willing participant in the accomplishment of salvation. And that's why that objection doesn't work, is because it pictures the Son as somehow being in direct contradiction to the Father, but instead they're united together, where the Son is saying, yeah, I'm laying down my life of my own accord.
Right. He says, no one takes my life from me. I lay it down of my own accord. Yeah, right. Which I think also shows that, nobody could have killed Jesus.
No.
Jesus laid it down his life.
Yeah.
That's a whole different thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And so just circling back, though, about the other sheep that are not of this fold. Mm-hmm. So it says, I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice, so there will be one flock. So there are those who believe that there's the Jews and the Gentiles, and there's kind of like a different program of Christianity and salvation, or, you know, like the dispensational view says that those are very distinct people. Jesus says there's one flock that I'm going to go out to the Gentiles, bring them in, and this will be one Jew and Gentile flock of Christianity.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just another thing I wanted to hit on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Jesus here has obviously said throughout the Gospel of John, in John 4, he says salvation is of the Jews, because he himself is a Jew. Salvation comes from the Jews. And so he calls his people from the Jewish people as well. But then he also calls people from the Gentile nations, and they all come together to make one flock.
One flock.
One
Not
shepherd.
two flocks.
Not two flocks. They're all one
Don't
flock
confuse
together.
it. One flock. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Pick it up in verse 19.
So this will be the last couple verses. It says, there was again a division among the Jews because of these words. Many of them said, he has a demon and is insane. Why listen to him? Others said, these are not the words of one who is oppressed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind?
No.
Nope. So here, there's a division among the people. They're trying to figure out what's going on, who Jesus is. And this continues the theme through the Gospel of John of discussion, confusion, questioning who Jesus really is. And we, as the readers of the gospel, are meant to pause here and say, yeah, okay, who is this guy? Do I trust this narrative in the Gospel of John? Do I trust this as an accurate representation? And is this truly the good shepherd who lays down his life for the sheep, the one who has been sent by the Father to save his people as the good shepherd, binding up the sheep who have been lost? And he does so by laying down his life, being willing to be consumed, so that way the sheep and the flock can flourish. And that's what's being asked of us as readers. So if you're listening, I encourage you to stop, consider who Jesus is, and ultimately believe in him. Confess your faith in him. He is the door. And as soon as you confess your faith in him, you go from unsaved to saved, not a part of his flock to a part of his flock. And he knows you and is calling you by name. And he died for you and loves you. So come be a part of his flock.
Right. And read these words again. Do they sound like the words of an insane man?
No.
When you read them,
they do not.
They wash over you
with
truth. And you go like, that is the reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ultimate truth. Anything else you want to say before we go?
I don't think so.
All right. The grass withers.
The flower fades.
But the word of the Lord endures forever.
Amen.
Amen.